Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started with the October 2014 US Azure Partner Community Call. On behalf of all of us here at Microsoft, thank you for taking the time out of your day to invest in this call and invest a little bit in building your own personal knowledge and your business knowledge around Azure. We're very excited to have you with us. So before we go ahead and get started, let me just bring up the agenda here. Today we're going to go through just a quick welcome and introductions, and we're actually going to throw up a few Q&A slides as well. Love to hear from you on that. We're going to take a brief look at the community and what's available for you on a monthly basis for you to engage with us very regularly. Then we're going to take a look at disaster recovery, just a quick overview of it before we do a deep dive into some of the scenarios in which Azure can help in Azure disaster recovery scenarios. And then we'll just summarize things. We are going to have time for Q&A. For some of you, you're probably wondering, I haven't been in a live meeting for a long time, and so some feedback we've gotten from the group already, from the community, is can we move to a more modern platform? The answer is absolutely yes. We are working on that, so hopefully by next month we'll have a different platform available to do that. But for this month, we are in live meeting. So just a quick reminder of some things. If you have any questions you want to answer, up on the top toolbar there is a Q&A pane, and you can go ahead and post a question there, and throughout the session we'll either reply to you real time or we'll save it for the end for any of our presenters to answer. And then up in the upper right hand corner there's an icon that's got 3 little sheets of paper, and if you want to download any of the slides that are shared out there, you can do that as well. If during the session you have any questions that are just more technical in nature, feel free to just send me a one-off ping meeting. My name is Nick Johnson, so you'll find me in the attendee list there, and you can just send me a message that way. So before we jump into our content, let's take a look at a couple of polling slides. I'd love to get your feedback. The first one is we'd love to understand, what is your relationship with Microsoft? So if you could just go ahead and select one of those, that'd be great. See some of the answers coming in there. All right, thank you for answering that one. And the next question is, help us understand what your role is. We'd love to understand so that every month as we build out these community calls, we can really try to frame up content that will be useful to you and what you do. See quite a few answers coming in there. Thank you again for filling that one out. And one last question today is, help us understand your level of engagement on Microsoft Azure. Outstanding. Looks like we've got folks that are in every single segment there, so that's really good to see. Excellent. Thank you for completing those polls. That helps us try to frame up the community for you next month. So as a point of reminder, and on behalf of the national PTS team that focuses on Azure, this is us. So if you see our names, our faces out on some of the blogs and the community events or on Yammer, this is who we are. So I'm Nick Johnson. I'm hosting the call today. With me are Frank Campisi and Jonathan Gardner, and we're excited to introduce Jonathan to you for the first time. He's just joined our team within the last month, and so I'm actually going to ask him to share just a little bit about himself.
Sure, thanks, Nick. So I'm Jonathan Gardner. As you can see from the slide, you can read through some of those highlights, but I actually came from the partner side of the fence not too long ago. I was the practice lead for a managed partner, and have a lot of experience both managing practices as well as doing business development side of the house. So everything from project management through developing managed services and IP for going to market. Lots of experience in multiple different verticals. Spend a lot of time online. So if you find me on Yammer, don't hesitate to reach out. If you want to hit me on link, you can catch me there. Or you can even grab me on Twitter and connect with me there. So looking forward to working with everybody. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. And as a reminder, all of us are here as resources for you. We want to be here to help you and help you answer your Azure questions and grow your business. So like Jonathan said, please feel free to connect with us over the various channels and use us as a resource. Just as a reminder, if you're new to the US Azure Partner Community, maybe this is your first time on the call, maybe somebody forwarded it to you and you're just kind of checking it out. We've got really 4 sets of resources that we're delivering very consistently for you across the various modalities that Microsoft has. And you'll see just an example on this slide. There's some URLs there, just some short URLs that you can use to sign up for these things. The first thing is we've got a newsletter that we are sending out every month, and that's just chock full of information that's specific to our monthly topic, as well as some broad sort of summaries of what's going on Azure, what new features are going into preview, what new things have gone GA, various opportunities, various training things that are coming out. So if you're interested at all in Azure, you kind of want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on, strongly encourage you to get that newsletter. We're also on Yammer. There is a specific US partner group dedicated to Azure. There is almost 1,000 partners that have signed up for that. So that's really a great way for you to engage not only with Microsoft but with your peers. So take advantage of that. Lastly, we do post blogs on a regular basis. They're chock full of information, links, pointers to more resources. Some of them are more focused on the sales side of the world. Some of them are focused on the technical side. So take advantage of those. And if you have anything you'd like to see a blog post on, we're also going to do some video blogs. So if you've got any of those that you'd like to see, feel free to send us a message. Just go on Yammer, send us an idea, and we'll definitely consider fitting that into the overall schedule. And lastly, you're here, so you know this. We've got monthly calls, and we're very excited to bring this to you on the third Thursday of every month. We're going to try to stay really consistent with that, and every month we're going to do a focused topic. So be looking for those, and we're going to try to, like I mentioned at the beginning, improve the experience, just making the sign-up easier so you can sign up for the rest of the year, as well as bring it to you through a more modern platform than Live Meeting gives us. So with that, let's shift focus a little bit to the scenario that we're going to cover on this month, which is disaster recovery and high availability using Azure. We're finding that disaster recovery is a hot topic. It's an important thing for a lot of businesses. Everybody should have a disaster recovery plan. Unfortunately, not everybody does, and that presents a great opportunity for you as partners to go in and help customers build that, to build something that is not always exciting, but is very necessary, and having a plan is a great thing. So this month, we just want to point out that we have posted several blogs on the topic of disaster recovery using Azure. So we're not going to cover what's in those today, but if you want to go and take a look at those, they're out there. They're on the Yammer group. I've posted the links to all of them there. You can also find them on the US blog. So be sure to check those out and hand them off to your team and your teammates as well. One of the questions that we get frequently is sort of what is the partner opportunity when it comes to Azure in any specific scenario? And as we go through the session today, I really encourage you to think about 4 questions. With disaster recovery in mind, think about, do all your customers have a cost-effective DR infrastructure? One of the things that I hear frequently is, well, my tier 1 workloads we have good disaster recovery plan for that, but we can't afford to do it for our tier 2 and tier 3. And so that's something that Azure can come in and help solve. And so I encourage you to think about that. And then think about, how do you plug the disaster recovery story into maybe your managed services practice, your infrastructure practice, as well as the learning plans, right? As Azure changes, as the cloud changes, your folks, your teams, as you are practice leads or maybe your individual folks who are deeply technical, as you build out your learning plans, think about staying on top of what is available, and look for some of those things as we go through the session today. And before we get to our guest speaker here, I want to share with you something that I had shared with a group of partners earlier this week, and it really is all about It's kind of a flow chart, and it's all about having a conversation just around disaster recovery, and it's super simple. It's kind of designed to be an elevator conversation, or one you could have over a cup of coffee with your customer. So it goes something like this, right? You just start with the question of how are you doing disaster recovery today? And they're either going to give you a couple of answers, right? One is we've got a co-located data center. And as you dig into that, you're maybe going to find out that there's some pain associated with that. Maybe it's cost, maybe it's effort, maybe it's policies. Maybe to recover something is sort of causing some heartburn because it would take 3 days to actually pull a recovery tape from the co-located data center. So talk through that, because if that's the case, there's definitely an opportunity to build cost savings and introduce those to your customer through Azure. The other answer they may give is, well, we don't really have it, or we only have it for certain workloads, but not all of them. If that's the case, there's definitely an opportunity as well to introduce Azure in terms of Azure Disaster Recovery through VMs. You can do blob storage. There's several options where Azure might come in, and so it's super important to, from a technical side, to understand how those things work, but from a sales side, to make sure that the sales folks in your world are equipped with just the right questions to be asking and just probing for some of that pain, and then being able to introduce Azure in the cloud as an opportunity to solve some of those problems. So with that in mind, I just want to introduce you to Vishal Mahatra. And Vishal is one of our experts on disaster recovery here in the company. And so I'm going to give the floor over to him and let him run with it. So Vishal, thank you for joining us. And let's just verify that I think you might still be on mute. So let's check that for you. All right. Vishal, are you with us now?
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Nick. Can you folks hear me now?
You sound great.
Sounds good. Welcome, everybody, to the Azure Site Recovery session. As Nick talked about, disaster recovery is a big topic, especially with Azure cloud capabilities. And today's session will talk through what are the different capabilities Azure Site Recovery provides to offer customers disaster recovery using Azure. I'm Vishal Mahatra. I'm the Principal Group Program Manager of Azure Site Recovery. So before we go and drill down into the capabilities of ASR, I think Nick did a great job of setting up the context of why we need disaster recovery solution. When we started building Azure Site Recovery, we talked to multiple customers. And one of the consistent patterns which emerged is a couple of things. One, the cost of doing disaster recovery is very high. And even if the companies are ready to pay the cost for doing disaster recovery, the complexity is also very high. And because of the cost and complexity reasons, not many companies are able to protect all their workloads. As Nick talked about, majority of the companies are able to protect only tier 1 workloads. You may even find companies who are struggling to protect even tier 1 workloads. At Microsoft, we do not accept this current state of disaster recovery. Our vision is to democratize disaster recovery so that we can offer disaster recovery to all our customers and all their apps. With that in mind, we invested in this service called Microsoft Azure Site Recovery. Now, before we go into detail of what ASR is, let's have a quick look at how Microsoft Disaster Recovery Stack look like. On this slide, on the left side, we have shown the standard data center architecture where you have compute storage network on the bottom, on top of which you create your machines, virtual machines, and then you deploy your applications like IIS, SQL, SharePoint, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the key components for any disaster recovery solution is the replication infrastructure. And traditionally, replication has been available in different variety. One of the most common example is storage-based replication. We have companies like EMC, NetApp, IBM, Dell, who have been selling expensive SAN arrays and the replication using storage replication technologies for many years. Recently, as the world started evolving towards software-defined everything, from Microsoft, we created a technology called Hyper-V Replica, which provides you replication at the software level. It's a Hyper-V based replication platform and provides you a replication which is agnostic to any storage. It works with any sort of storage. Last but not the least, there are cases where you have application level replication technologies. A good example is SQL Always On, which is the replication channel comes with SQL. Recently, you might have heard an announcement from Microsoft where we acquired a company by the name InMarge. InMarge provides us a replication which is a guest-based replication and works across all the platform, be it Hyper-V, VMware or physical. So those are the different replication channels and has their pros and cons. There are places depending on what is your RPO and RTO requirement for your disaster recovery need, you might choose one or other replication channel. However, when we think about disaster recovery, replication channel is a necessary component of disaster recovery so that the data is replicated to another site, and in the case of disaster, you can bring your application. But none of these replication channels brings your application. The promise we want to give to our customers that in the case of disaster recovery, they can get one single click button experience and they can get their application up and running on the recovery site, which involves many more things beyond replicating data. For example, if you have a 3-tier application, how do you want to make sure the web tier comes first, followed by the DB tier comes first, followed by web tier, and so on and so forth. Most of the times you will find that the recovery site networking infrastructure is different from the primary site networking infrastructure. How will you make sure that the applications are connected to the right network, the IPs are provided as per the recovery side, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of manual steps and things are needed, and with Azure Site Recovery, we want to provide you a fully automated, orchestrated DR solution which work across any of the replication channel of your choice, as well as it work across all the platforms, be it Hyper-V, be it VMware, or be it physical. So, what are the different scenarios we enable with Azure Site Recovery? Just give me a second, I'm struggling. So there are primarily two scenarios we enable with Azure Site Recovery. First, what we called a traditional on-premise to on-premise disaster recovery scenario. As you can see, a typical customer has a primary site, and for DR need, either he has built his own recovery site or he has worked with a service provider and got a colo site. In this scenario, Microsoft Azure Site Recovery provides you an orchestrated DR solution so that in the case of disaster, you can fail over your application or your full site from the primary site to the secondary site. And in terms of replication channel, you have multiple choices. You can use Hyper-V Replica, the software-defined replication channel. You can use SQL Always On, or you can use storage-based replication channel, the ones provided by our SAN partners like EMC, NetApp, and so on and so forth. Not just that, with InMarge acquisition, this is great and works for Hyper-V platform. We got a lot of great feedback from our customers where they have asked that not only they want Azure Site Recovery for their Hyper-V platform, they have customers who have heterogeneous infrastructure, they have physical, they have VMware, and they want Azure Site Recovery scenarios capability to work for those heterogeneous infrastructure also. And that's where we acquired InMarge Scout, and using InMarge Scout, we are able to provide you all those rich orchestrated DR scenarios where your primary site could be either physical or VMware, and if you have a recovery site which is VMware, same Azure Site Recovery provides you those experiences. Now, as Nick talked about, if these are the scenarios where we have customers who can afford a lot of money to set up a secondary site or have a colo and things like that. And even if these customers have money, they are able to do that only for tier 1 workloads. We have seen a lot of customers who have not been able to invest in a secondary site. For them, we have this scenario where a customer who is hosting his workload in the primary site can use Azure as a disaster recovery target. This is the scenario we have released as a preview sometime in June around decade time, and we are pleased to announce that in the first week of October, now this is GA and is available for everybody to do DR from their primary site into Azure. Now, as you can figure out with InMarch, now we are no more limited to Hyper-V. So the same scenario will extend to other platforms like VMware, Physical, and so on. That is going to come sometime in the early part of 2015. So to summarize, Azure Site Recovery is a single solution for disaster recovery needs, whether you want to do DR between two of your sites or you don't want to invest expensive CapEx and OpEx and you want to use Azure as a target. Second, it's a single solution which works across Hyper-V, VMware, Physical, any of the platform. And again, it's a single solution which works across any replication channel. The channel could be Hyper-V replica, InMarch, SAN, a channel of your choice which provides you the RP or RTO of your need. Okay, so in terms of scenarios, this slide goes a little deeper on the different scenarios we talked about. Like you have two sites, both implemented using Hyper-V, and you're using replica, or you have two Hyper-V sites where you're using SAN to replicate. Again, the same ASR infrastructure service you can use for your DR infrastructure management. Or you can use Azure Site Recovery, which is the topic for today, where we'll show you how you can use Azure Site Recovery to do DR into Microsoft Azure. So no need to invest huge amount of CapEx and OpEx for your DR site. And as we talked about with InMarch technology, we can use Azure Site Recovery to replicate data between two VMware and Physical sites. And early 2015, we are also enabling that scenario where your VMware or heterogeneous customer can also use Microsoft Azure to do DR in Azure. Okay, so without further delay, let me quickly go into a demo of how ASR works. I'm trying to share my desktop. Let me know once you folks are able to see that.
It looks like it's coming through now.
Okay, so this is the familiar Azure portal you folks are already using for different Azure services you're using. Disaster recovery or Azure Site Recovery service is available as part of recovery services. To use Azure Site Recovery, it is fairly simple experience where you can go under Data Services Recovery Service and you can create what we call a Site Recovery Vault and give it a name, Azure Demo. One of the benefits of being an Azure service, you get the benefit of the Azure Data Center all across the globe. Azure Site Recovery is available in all the different regions of Azure. So as a customer, you have a choice where if for different legal regulations, you do not want your DR site to be away from your region, you have the choice. So if you're a customer sitting in US, you can select a region in US. We have multiple regions like West US, East US, and make sure that when you're using Azure for disaster recovery, your data is going into Azure in the West US region. So this is how you create a vault. It's as simple as that. For today's demo, I already have a vault created. And when you enter into a vault, one of the standard patterns of Azure is this getting started experience, where you can see all the different scenarios which are enabled by Azure Site Recovery. You can see between two on-premise site of Hyper-V, VMware, or between the on-premise site Hyper-V and Microsoft Azure. And this Getting Started tutorial walks you through what are the different steps you need to do to enable this disaster recovery scenario. So one of the first experiences is preparing your VMM server. Azure Site Recovery has a rich integration with your on-prem management infrastructure. Like if you're managing your Hyper-V infrastructure with Virtual Machine Manager, you just need to download what we call Azure Site Recovery Provider and install it on your VMM server. Second, for your DR into Azure, you need to have an Azure storage account. And we also have a Microsoft Azure Recovery Service agent. This is an agent which you need to install on each of the hosts for which you are doing disaster recovery into Azure. Those are the first two steps. Once you do that, you're ready to start configuring this disaster recovery using the step 3, which is set up protection for your VMM clouds. So for example, here you can see I have the list of all the different clouds on the primary site which are managed by VMM. So let me go into one of the clouds called Finance Clouds. And configuring a cloud for disaster recovery to Azure is fairly simple. Like what you select, what is your target? This target could be, as we talked about, either another on-premise site. And for this session, we are focusing on target to be Azure. So you select target to be Azure. You select one of the storage account. Now, unlike many of the disaster recovery solutions which are available in the market, where the competitors are taking their existing DR technology and putting in Azure, Azure Site Recovery is a DR solution for the cloud which is designed grounds up. What I mean by that, when you use Azure Site Recovery for your DR needs, what we do, we find out all the changes which are happening for your workloads on premise and send those changes to the storage account in Microsoft Azure. So for the steady state, which is majority of the state in the disaster recovery scenario where you are running your workloads on premise, there is no need to run any active VMs in Azure. So the cost of this disaster recovery solution is really cost effective as compared to the other competitors in the market, where if you want to enable DR for 10 VMs, you also need to run 10 VMs in Azure and do replication between them. That also comes out cheaper as compared to your colo or building a data center cost, because that is far expensive. But what we are giving you is a DR solution designed for public cloud. Here you do not need to run anything in the cloud. We have a Azure Site Recovery service running in Azure, and in the steady state, we send data to this storage account which you provide to us. Second, key capability, all the data which transmits from your on-premise to Azure Site Recovery is of course encrypted and sent over HTTPS. In addition, we also give you capability if you want to encrypt data at rest. Not only we provide you this capability, this data is encrypted with a key which is stored only with the customer. So we never get this information. Only when you want to fail over your application in Azure, you enter that key, we decrypt the data and bring your application using Azure IaaS infrastructure. We provide you different frequencies. So you can send your data to Azure every 30 seconds, every 5 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on what is the RPU you are expecting for your disaster recovery. You can configure these capabilities. Then we have multiple more options, like do you want to have certain recovery points where if your latest recovery point is not good, do you want to fail over to an earlier recovery point? Do you want app consistent snapshot? We have a great integration with VSS technology, so we can provide you app consistent disaster recovery. And last but not the least, especially for your initial replication, we have the capability where you can say, instead of starting replication now during the office hour, you can give a off-peak hour to send the first seed of the data into Azure. So this is how you configure your private cloud infrastructure on-premise to Azure as a DR target. Once you do that, the next step is to enable replication for the individual VMs. So for example, I have this finance cloud, and in this cloud I have multiple virtual machines. If I want to enable DR for a particular machine, it is as simple as saying add virtual machine for disaster recovery. I can see all the different VMs which are in this cloud and not yet configured for disaster recovery. I can select a VM. It will ask me what is the operating system. I'll select the operating system and press OK. It's as simple as that. Once you configure the cloud to have Azure as a target, enabling a new VM for disaster recovery is just selecting that VM, and now Azure Site Recovery will do the magic of protecting this virtual machine to Azure for your disaster recovery need. Now let's drill down what's happening behind the scenes. So Azure Site Recovery has a jobs view where you can monitor the status of all the jobs. So we just kicked off replication on enabling protection for this particular VM called SharePoint App Server. So if you drill down into the job, you can see what's all is happening. We'll perform a set of preconditions that this VM is capable of running in Azure IaaS. We'll find out the right target in Azure IaaS for it. Then we'll enable replication. As you can recognize, first time when you enable replication, we have to seed all the data to send to Azure. It will take time depending upon the size of the virtual machine and depending upon how much bandwidth you have available between your primary site and Azure. All those steps will be performed, and you have this central console where you can see the status of each of those steps. Not just that, if you go to the protected items view, from where we enable the protection for this virtual machine, you can see the status of different virtual machine, what's their health. So for example, SharePoint App Server is the VM which we just enabled for protection. You can see the status in enabling protection. SharePoint Web is another VM I just enabled before our call, and you can see at present it is doing the initial replication. 57% of data is synchronized, while I have some other VMs which are already protected and they're healthy. So whatever changes are happening on the primary site, those changes are getting sent to the recovery site. So this is great. You can configure your primary site with Azure as a target, like what we did in the cloud configuration. Then you can enable protection for a VM. Not just that, as you may recognize that there are few differences between your primary site infrastructure and your Azure, and we handle all those differences pretty well for you. For example, you can find out when you drill down into the properties of a VM, you can see what is the on-premise properties of the VM, what are the properties on Azure. So if you want to change the name of the VM in Azure, the most important property for Azure is Azure has a notion of these sizes. We have the algorithm where depending on the size of the VM, we automatically map the VM to the best possible size. However, we give you the flexibility where you can change the size as per your need. Similarly, we map the VMs to the networks, which I'll just show you. But again, we give you the capability if you want to change the network and so on and so forth. So we enabled DR for the cloud. We enabled DR for a particular VM. As we talked about, just data replication is not enough. For the DR to work, at the time of failover, the VM should be connected to the right network, get the right IP and so on. And this is pretty painful. When we talk to our customer, this was one of the reasons most of the DR drills or real failures were failing. So we invested heavily into simplifying the disaster recovery networking with a feature what we call network mapping. So if you go into the resources tab under networks, what you can do, you can see your source location, which is a VMM on-premise server. In terms of target, I'll say Microsoft Azure is my target, and I'll see all the different network for source as well as in Azure. and with a single button click, I can map my on-premise networks to my Azure network. Once you do that, behind the scene, we really make DR networking simple, because what happens when you fail over your VMs to Azure, suppose you are failing over 20 VMs to Azure, you don't need to worry about going to each VM, connecting to the right network, assigning the right IP, and so on. We know which VM is connected to which network on the primary site. With network mapping, we know what is the mapped network on the recovery site. At the time of failover, we automatically connect the VM to the mapped recovery network in Azure. That is how we provide you a single-click failover, and not just the VMs will come up on the recovery site, we'll also ensure these VMs have the right network connected to it. Okay. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you are looking for what about application failover? What about site level failover? So I have a multi-tier application called Finance App Recovery. I am the IT admin, and I just got a news that hurricane is coming up in the next 24 hours, and I want to fail over my application from my on-premise data center into Azure. So to do that, it's as simple as selecting a recovery plan for your application and performing what we call different failover operation. In this case, let me say plant failover, and it will tell me that I am taking this application from my on-premise infrastructure to Microsoft Azure, and press a button OK. As simple as that. Select your recovery plan, confirm that you are going from on-premise to Azure, and press OK. That's it. All the work about failing over this application and bringing up in Azure will be taken care by Azure Site Recovery. So how does Azure Site Recovery provide you this single-click failover? This capability comes from what we call recovery plan. And when we talk to our customers that when you're doing DR, how do you get your application working reliably? One of the first feedback we get from our customers that in the multi-tier application, they have this concept of some sequencing or some dependencies, and that is key to get disaster recovery right. So we provide you this capability through a capability what we call groups. So in a recovery plan, you can create multiple groups, and you can put different virtual machines in different groups. So whenever you'll perform failover, we will ensure that a group 1 is failed over before a VM, a group 2 will fail over, before a VM of group 3 will fail over. So as you can see, for my 3-tier application, I got SQL in group 1. So SQL will come up first, followed by middle tier app, followed by IS app. Now that is great. Customers loves it. However, at the same time, they say not when I bring my applications, it's not just about sequencing of VMs. After I bring my SQL up, I also want to make sure that everything is good in SQL. I want to run some consistency check. I want to make sure that SQL is really pinging, and so on and so forth. So we also have capability where not just sequencing, you can also interject scripts into a recovery plan. And again, leveraging the full power of Azure, we provide you an integration with your Azure automation service. It's another Azure service which provides you capability to run different scripts in Azure. So you can define any scripts, and from your Azure automation account and from recovery plan, you can call that script at any point in the recovery plan. So for example, here you can see after failing over SQL, before I fail over middleware app, I am checking that my SQL app has failed over well, everything is good. Our customers love it. However, there are times where not everything you can automate, and customer ask for capability where they want certain manual action, where they want the whole recovery to halt, and a set of instruction which they can give to the admin who is performing the recovery, so that the recovery can be fully automated as well as structured as one recovery plan. So we have this capability called manual action, where again at any point in the recovery plan you can inject a manual action, You can provide name, you can provide instruction. Anybody who is running the recovery plan will see these instructions, perform these instructions, and then only the recovery will be carried forward. So recovery plan is a very powerful construct which provides you capability for sequencing, scripts, manual action. Now, one of the things which I haven't talked about is parallelism. So if you have lots of VMs which you want to fail over together, they don't have dependencies. For example, in this case, suppose it was a scale-out application where you have 4 front-end servers, and typically you will not have any dependencies among the front-end servers. So you can put all your 4 front-end servers in group 3, then all the 4 front-end servers will fail over in parallel. So those are the different capabilities a recovery plan provides you. Again, a central job console gives you all the capabilities to see what's going on with your recovery plan. So let me go. See, it seems something has failed, which is also good. You can see the status of all the different capabilities. So one of the pre-flight check has failed. You can see the error details. So in this case, the script which I have used from the Azure Automation invoke PS command, it seems I haven't published that script, and that is one of the pre-flight check which we perform to make sure everything is in a good state before we can execute, and that is failed in this particular condition. Let me see if I have a recovery plan from the earlier job which we can use to showcase how a recovery plan execution look like. Okay, so this is a recovery plan for a plan called DR plan. So here you can see the pre-flight check passes. Then we create the environment. Now, not only the groups helps you to sequence the failover, it also helps you to shut down. We also automate everything on the primary side. So if you're doing a plant failover, we will shut down, and now this time we will do the shutdown in the reverse order. So first we will shut down the web servers, then we'll shut down the database server, and then we will start your failover. We'll run whatever steps you have said, the manual action scripts, and all those things. And all this information is available to you from this central dashboard. Not only this, one of the key reasons people invest for DR is it's a requirement for most of the standards like ISO, HIPAA, and so on and so forth. So if you want to have capability to provide reports, you can do that with this capability, what we call export job. And it gives you a nice Excel presentation of this whole recovery plan execution, which you can give to your customer who wants a DR audit, or to your auditor, where all these details will be there. When did you do the DR drill? What time it started? What time it finished? What was the RTO 33 minutes? Which step took what time? All that information is available, even if there are errors, what were the errors, and so on and so forth. One of the key capabilities of Azure Site Recovery is what we call providing DR drills without impacting production. A lot of our customers, when we talk to them, complains that they have invested in DR infrastructure, but they are still not able to do DR drill because they are very afraid it will impact their production. So to overcome that problem, what we have built, what we called a feature called test failover. Very simple. Again, select your recovery plan, say in this case marketing failover, and say test failover. At this time, what we ask you is to provide us a VM network from Azure, and what we'll do, we'll create a copy of your application, all the VMs in your application as defined in your recovery plan in this virtual network. So there will be no impact on the production side. Your production side can continue to run as is, no change. So your customers will not even notice that you are doing a DR drill. Not only that, even the replication, the changes you are making on the production side will continue to get replicated to Azure Storage account. What we are doing here is just giving you a copy of production into this test network so you can perform DR drills with confidence. This is a feature our customers love because it really solves a big pain point for them that they can do DR drills with confidence. Not only that, it gives you a great tool to do dev test environment for your production application, because if you have a new release or a new patch, you can just run a test failover, get a copy, do whatever testing you want to do. Then you have the confidence that once you will apply this patch on your production, it will work very well for your case. Okay, I think that's all I have in terms of demo. Any questions I would love to take before I go for a couple of few slides to end the session? Nick?
Yep. We did have some questions come in to the console. We've answered a few of them on the fly here, but there's still some that are out there. I'll try to summarize them here. One, it looks like when you're doing that initial sync between your on-premise VM and maybe pushing it up into Azure, what type of performance do you typically see?
Great question. So we totally realized that depending on the size of the VM, this could be a challenge, and we have invested in multiple solutions to overcome this challenge. One of the solutions is the algorithm which we use to transfer data to Azure. So we have a smart algorithm where if you have a 100 GB VM, but it's only using 10 GB of data, 90 GB is white space, we only transfer 10 GB of data. Second, we have integration with Express Route. So if your customer uses Azure Express Route where it have 1 Gbps, 10 Gbps big fat pipe, we work great with Express Route. In fact, we did a dog fooding with a customer and we got up to 2 Gbps per second throughput with Express Route. We also have worked with multiple WAN optimizer, like one of the most common one is the Riverbed, and if you have a Riverbed appliance, you can get up to 74% of compression on your pipe. So optimized algorithm, integration with Express Route, ability to work with Riverbed are the three solutions to handle this problem today. Next in our roadmap is integration with Azure Import Export Service, where you can send the data using Azure Import Export capability.
Great. Good. And there's a follow-up question to that. You had started a sync earlier with looked like it was maybe 100 megabyte VM, or maybe it was gigabyte. I don't quite remember. Is that sync done yet? We'd just love to see the performance on that.
Sure. No, that sync is going on. So we saw one of the VM when we started, the thing was at 57%. That one has got protected. This one is still going on.
Sounds great. Thanks for showing that. A separate question revolves around InMoj. Do you need to use Virtual Machine Manager if you're doing the InMoj solution?
No, you do not need Virtual Machine Manager if you're using InMoj solution, because InMoj solution is primarily for VMware and physical environments, and it works with vCenter as well as with the SX host. This is another request we get a lot. So even for our Hyper-V customers, especially the small SMB customers who have just few Hyper-V hosts, so now we are working on an Azure Site Recovery scenario which will work with VMM as well as outside VMM. So currently we are working with a small set of customers on that scenario. If you have customers who would like to enable Azure Site Recovery without VMM, feel free to send us email and we'll love to work with you.
Sounds great. Thank you. I think that's all the main questions. We've got a few that have come in that we'll answer through the chat window here to the folks that have asked those. So stick with us there. So if you've got some closing comments, feel free to bring those up.
Sure. Let me get the deck. So to summarize, that's what we saw in the different demos. We talked about how we can automate the protection and replication of VM, one of the complex part of networking, how we can simplify with network mapping, the customization with recovery plans provide us a one-click application of site recovery failures. We talked about how you can do TFO with no impact on production. And finally, the remote health monitoring with JobsView and compliance reporting. One of the most common queries we get is, what about the pricing? It looks great. No need to set up new data centers. No need to have a lot of operations to manage it. I would love to deploy it. So again, we have a very simple principle that Azure Site Recovery is more like an insurance. So for a typical steady state, we do not want you to charge for anything. Once you subscribe to Azure Site Recovery, that's it. So when you subscribe for Azure Site Recovery for a VM, along with that, we give you free 100 GB of storage. So once you're sending your data, it is residing in a storage account, and per VM you get 100 GB of storage entitlement. When you're sending your changes, they are being written in the storage. So we also give you each VM 1 million storage transactions, so you don't have to pay for that. And last but not the least, whenever you fail over VMs to Azure, and if you want to come back, we provide you a failback capability. And during that failback period, you will download 100 GB of data. So we provide you free 100 GB download capability also. The ingress to Azure is anyway free. So when you're sending data into Azure, there is no need to pay for it. So once you pay for Azure Site Recovery, that's it. There is no additional charges needed for this. And all these entitlements are at a subscription level. So as an example says, you might have 5 VMs with 50 GB and another 5 with 150 GB. Overall, still you have an average 100 GB size and you don't have to pay for anything. Only when you fail over your workloads to Azure, either for DR drill or for the real failover, those times your VMs becomes Azure IS VMs, and then you pay the Azure IS charges. So that's the pricing model for ASR. I'm happy to announce with the Azure GA in the first week of October, we have a promo of Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup. Azure Backup is another service which provides you the ability to back up your data into Azure. So typically, if you buy one instance of Azure Site Recovery to protect one VM and 100 GB of Azure Backup, it charges you something around some $700 odd, $23. With this promo, we are giving you a 46% discount to get one license of ASR plus 100 GB of Azure Backup. So with this, you can offer your enterprise a choice. The same Azure Site Recovery will provide them capability to do DR between two of their data centers or a colo facility, or the best, they don't even need to invest in a data center, just do DR into Azure. With ASR, they have this choice where they can decide their DR location, and it works across Hyper-V, VMware, Physical, all those platforms. Okay. We have multiple customers who are using this capability today. We are not having enough time, so I'm just passing those data in the deck. You will have access to that. Another common scenario we have seen is there are a lot of service providers who are also using Azure Site Recovery to offer DR into different scenarios. Again, there are service providers who have two data centers. They're using Azure Site Recovery. We also have service providers who might be using doesn't have secondary data center. They want to use DR into Azure. So both those options are available, and we have rich integration story with Microsoft Azure Pack, where all these capabilities of Azure Site Recovery a tenant can subscribe to, as well as we have all the SDK of Azure Site Recovery available. So if as a service provider, as an enterprise, you want to integrate these capability into your experience, those capabilities are also available to you. Last, to summarize, these are all the different scenarios we talked about, and we have a rich set of resources. One of the most common one is we have two step-by-step tutorials of how you can do DR between on-prem to Azure or between two on-prem sites. These are great tutorials. I would request you, if you want to try out the service, just go through these tutorials. It has all the steps, and you can set up this on your own.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Vishal, for your presentation today. That was very helpful. I hope everybody learned something from that. And we've gotten a few questions come through the Q&A. Just to make everybody aware, yes, we will post the recording of this out to the Yammer site here in just a few days after it processes. We'll also post the slides that we shared with you today, so you can download those and use those as you need for your own learning. So just want to remind you to go out and join the Yammer group, because that's where you're going to be able to get access to those. Just a reminder for those of you that didn't join us right at the beginning, be sure to sign up for the newsletter and the Yammer feed and the blog. A lot more information that's going to be coming through there. If you have any feedbacks, questions, comments related to this particular call or just the community as a whole, feel free to post those on Yammer and use that hashtag. That'll allow us to filter for it and find those right away. You might get a survey after this call. Please take a time to fill that out, let us know. And then lastly, just want to let you know that next month, our topic across all our different platforms is going to be server migrations to Azure. So we're going to be talking about Hyper-V, VMware, Server 2003, moving apps to Azure. There's quite a bit of really rich information there that we're excited to bring you. We've already been working on that. So be on the lookout for that. And if we don't talk to you before, we'll see you at the call next month. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out and just thank you for your time today.